Welcome to the ninth Photics TV podcast. This one's going to be technical because it's about AI. It's a problem we have because I wrote another book, right? This is not something new I've done, but because AI is way different now, who's going to believe that I actually wrote this whole book? Who does that kind of thing? 500 pages on web development. Well, I wrote the book. No auto-generated content was used in the creation of the book. But there is an asterisk. I did use Apple Intelligence to check for typos, but just because I use M dashes doesn't mean it's AI. I mean, not even AI would use over 1,000 M dashes. That's just insane. But I did use some clip art, right? So that's part of Pages. Apple Pages have these little drawings that I added there to break up the text. I tried to use it in creative ways to liven up the text, you know, so it's not so serious, right? And there's one other asterisk. While I was working on the book, there was a major development in AI, and I wanted to test it out. And I had it rate my code. I took one of the examples in the book, and it started analyzing it, and it was all this text and all this stuff. I started like, whoa, no. This is going to influence my book. I don't want to use this right now. And I think if you read my book, you'll know that it has like a very it's unique, right? I'm writing from 30 years of experience as a web developer. And so it's unique. At least I tried to make it unique. It's a unique perspective, right? But now that the book is done, let's test it out. What does AI think of my code? And so here's the setup. And what's nice is that this didn't cost me anything. I just downloaded Ollama, right? That's basically software to run AI models offline. There is a cloud thing, but I didn't use the cloud. This is offline. Gemma 4, which is E4B. That's Google's model under the Apache 2 license. Very nice. That was the big change that happened. I was like, whoa, that's interesting. And using, even though I have an M4 Mac Mini, I ran this on a much older computer. It's the MacBook Air M1. It's a 6-year-old computer, just about, right? And so, I mean, it doesn't even have a functioning monitor. So we're not talking about cutting-edge technology here. I mean, it's Apple Silicon, which is nice, but it's older Apple Silicon. All right, so here's running the setup. So the first command, I wanted to make sure that I was running the latest version of Gemma 4 E4B. And so I used the command Ollama pull Gemma 4 :E4B, right? That's over here. And so I think I got the latest version, and because there's these little squiggly lines over here, the codes, so it matched. There's a command, I think it's Ollama list, and it listed the LLMs I had there, and it matched. So I think it's the latest version. So now it's time to run the setup. So I have Ollama, I have my MacBook Air, and I have Gemma 4 E4B, which is, I think, 8 billion parameter model. So I just ran the command, Ollama run Gemma 4 :E4B. And one of the first things I like to do is, because I forget, I use the slash and then a question mark to get a list of the available commands. Because I haven't really used AI like this much. So it's nice to know how to actually exit out of it and how to, do things. But it's not that complex. I mean, even if you're not that familiar with the terminal, it's not too complicated to get this to work. And so what are we looking at? We're going to look at the Bible web app. Okay, so this is it's a significant part of the book. It's one of the main projects showing how you can go from basically a vanilla web project to a progressive web app, right? So if you want to see the code, it's online, it's on GitHub, and the project is also at photics.com. Again, it's a vanilla web project. That means it's just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It doesn't use third-party libraries. It's designed, even though it is online, it's designed to work offline. Okay, so it's not entirely finished, but it works, right? It's usable. So the first attempt, I downloaded the project. I mean, even though it was on my computer already, for some reason I downloaded it from GitHub. And so as a zip, put it on the desktop, open the, extract, I guess is the term, right? Unzipped the zip file, and there were my web project files. And so I dragged the little folder over to the terminal after writing rate this web project. And you can see it there. It says users, Photics, desktop, Bible main. Right? That seemed basic enough. So let's see what happened. And it starts thinking, which is, it's unsettling with this new technology. Even though I've seen movies, you watch Star Wars, you see C-3PO, you watch cartoons at Jetsons, of Rosie. It's like, for decades we've been hearing about AI is coming. But when you actually see it on old hardware too, or this M1, 6-year-old laptop, it's thinking. Like when I bought this computer, it couldn't do that. So, woo. Anyway, so it started, I think you can turn this off, but the fact that it was enabled is something that, like, when you search online, you may or may not see when you work with search engines are almost like AI chatbots now. But in this here, in the terminal, it was showing its thought process, which is so bizarre to me. Like I guess it's artificial intelligence, but like you're actually seeing it happen. It creates like an uncanny valley kind of feeling, right? But anyway, it said, analyzing the request, the user wants me to rate this web project and provides a file path. Users, Photics, desktop, Bible-main. Determine capability. To rate a web project, I need to inspect its code, functionality, structure, design, and overall user experience. That sounds very technical, right? Very professional. 3, check input. The input provided is a local file path. Users, Photics, desktop, Bible-main. Identify limitation. As an AI model running remotely, which really? Remotely? I do not have access to the user's local file system, desktop, user, folders, etc. I cannot browse or access files at that specific path. Formulate the response strategy, the solution. All right, and it goes into, it suggests an alternative formats for review, provide, acknowledge the request, explain the limitation, provide actionable instructions. Basically, it can't do it. So it's preparing to make a response. And said, draft the response, focus on helpfulness despite the limitation. So it's going to be polite, even though it can't do the job. So nothing's happened yet, by the way. Like if you had turned off thinking, you wouldn't know any of this. And so here's the response. It said, I cannot access local files on your computer, including the directory at users, Photics, desktop, Bible main. My environment is separate from your personal computer for privacy and technical reasons. I mean, that's good. That's security. You kind of want to see that. And it makes suggestions. How can you share the project for review? And number 1, it says, if the project is hosted online, best option, provide a live demo link, GitHub, Pages, cloud deployment link. This allows me to interact with the project as a user would. And so I'm thinking, clever girl, right? This raptor already wants to escape Jurassic Park. You're not getting online access. And it said, once you provide the content or the link, I can rate it based on several criteria, such as functionality. Does it meet the stated goals? Code quality. Is the code clean, efficient, and maintainable? User experience. Is it intuitive and easy to use? Design, UI. Is the layout appealing and responsive? Security. Are there any obvious vulnerabilities? Looking forward to taking a look. So I had to rethink how I'm going to get the JavaScript to the whole web project, basically, but I was most concerned about the JavaScript. How am I going to get that to the AI? So key files. If the project is large, paste specific files you want me to review, such as index.html, style CSS, or a core JavaScript function, and explain what that file is supposed to do. And so that's what I did. I basically took the JavaScript file, but I modified it a bit. There is an obvious mistake, and I'm aware of it, and we'll see if the AI gets it. But basically I put the entire Bible in the JavaScript, which is a no-no. I understand that. But there's reasons I did it that way, and it probably will be changed eventually, but it was part of an experiment and to see where I would run into issues. So this is a known issue here. You're not supposed to put like 5,000 lines. It's even more than that. I think it's around 36,000 lines in the JavaScript file. There's better ways to manage that, I'm aware. But the point is I just did a small part of the database and then pasted that into basically the chat, the terminal. And to do multi-line, you use 3 double quotes. So then it started thinking, and it did that for a while. So this is not like fast. It's like, it reminds me of the old Commodore days. But when you think about it, what it's about to do, I can wait. You're going to look at my whole project and tell me how it did. I can be patient there. It wasn't blazing fast, but again, this is offline. It's not. I didn't have to worry about any cloud fees or anything like that. So it said thinking. Here's a thinking process that leads to the detailed review, and so I didn't even tell it was a Bible project. It figured that out, okay? It said, number 1, understand the goal. The user has provided a large block of JavaScript code, large block, okay, for a Bible project. The goal is to rate the project based on this code, assuming the surrounding HTML, CSS are functional for a biblical reader application. Interesting. And then it starts listing the features, which is kind of amazing, right? So it said, analyzing the code's purpose, what does it do? And it said, the code handles the display and navigation of Bible text. It uses pre-structured data, CPDV, the actual text content, and books, the book chapter ranges. Key features, reading, displaying text based on book chapter verse selection, navigation, arrow keys, tabs, explicit controls for book, chapter, verse. Autocomplete search functionality for book titles, search implementation, searching for a term across all verses and paginating results, highlighting the current verse. Like it was wild to see it displayed this way, because when I did it, it felt casual. This feels more like a business meeting, the way it's describing the project, that I did. That looked nice. And so then it starts evaluating the code. It says, evaluate the code quality, the core rating. I need to break the review down into technical categories. Efficiency, performance. Is it fast? Are there bottlenecks? Readability, maintainability. Is it easy for another developer to understand, fix? Robustness. Error handling. What happens when the user types something wrong or clicks unexpectedly? And the last one is architecture, design patterns. Is the code organized well? And so it's preparing a critique. Detailed code review, drafting the critique. Data structure, the use of hard-coded arrays, CPDV, books, is simple but non-scalable. Changing the Bible version or adding books requires manual code edits. Critique point, data fetching APIs. So we'll get to it. Let's go to the next one. DOM manipulation, Bible get data. This function rebuilds a large part of the DOM every time the view changes. While necessary, repeated DOM manipulation can be slow, especially for large text. The use of document get element by ID and insert adjacent element is acceptable but needs careful management. So for this part, and it's in the book, I did a lot of testing to make sure that the Bible app felt fast. And you can go online and test it and see if it's fast. And next part. And then it said event handlers, Bible keys, Bible reading. These functions are massive and handle too many responsibilities. State management, DOM update, input validation, navigation logic. This is a major violation of the single responsibility principle. Right? So I suppose it's a somewhat fair critique, but it's a balance. Do you want a lot of simple functions, or do you want a few functions that you want to manage? And so I suppose I was feeling that when creating the app, that it felt like the functions were a bit too big, but there were decisions that were made to keep it that way. I don't want to get into too much complexity, but basically It was a conscious decision. Now, can you say, is it right or wrong? Well, if you're going by the single responsibility principle, keeping your function simple for maintainability, that's a fair point. But there is a counter argument. And I think there's a bit of a back and forth that might have been interesting. That what I didn't do was ask the AI some follow-up questions. But I want to keep this video under an hour so that the other AI at YouTube can translate it into different languages. So moving on. Text highlighting. This was a big problem. Search logic, Bible search data. This function is complex, especially logic for wrapping the search terms in bold tags. Calculating offsets, pagination. It's working, but highly brittle. Again, this is a more complex issue. It's not highly brittle. There's reasons, and again, this is part of the book. You have a choice between the new highlighting API or using it the old way, which is what I did for compatibility and in actually greater customization. So I think what's important to say is that the AI doesn't know much about the project, right? So it's going based on a more general term. It doesn't know all of the requirements. In fact, I didn't mention any of the requirements. A lot of the decisions that went into the code have to do with, quite frankly, a kind of unique requirements, right? So basically working with a database in vanilla JavaScript, you're going to have compromises that are a little unusual. This one's a different story in the sense that it doesn't like global variables, right? So global state, the use of numerous global variables, Bible book index, Bible chapter, Bible verse, Bible search offset, etc., makes debugging extremely difficult and the code hard to test. And so it missed key points there. First, it didn't mention the use of strict mode. It's not a perfect solution, but it does help in this situation. So that's part of it. It doesn't know, and it couldn't know, that the JavaScript is loaded as a module. Again, not a perfect solution, but it does address the issue of global variables. They're not so global when they're loaded as a module. It also, and this was surprising, it didn't mention the use of test mode to help with testing. There were a lot of variables. There's a lot going on. It's true that the functions are complex. And to address that issue, there's a built-in test mode to make it easier to see what's going on, so that if you are working on the project, at least when I was working on it, I had a bit of trouble keeping track of the functions, and I was not able to fix them until I added this test mode. Now, you could say that's exactly why it's wrong, right? But again, it's the complexity. There were logical decisions in why the functions are a little bigger and why the global variables at the top. Now, you can debate, that's my style. I guess if you could say, well, your style's wrong. But I like global variables. It's something you can do in JavaScript. So unless they say no more global variables, why is it a problem if I'm using the software the way it's designed? But anyway. So ultimately, it realizes that a critique is, for humans, very emotional, right? We don't like it. So it's preparing to be delicate. It said, structuring the feedback, the output format. A good review is balanced, strengths first, then weaknesses, followed by actionable recommendations. It says, overall impression, the grade, high effort, functional, but needs major refactoring. Major refactoring, oh boy. Strengths, functionality, completeness, handling complex inputs, key events. Weakness, global state, monolithic functions, efficiency, lack of modularity. And so recommendations, actionable recommendations, how to fix the weaknesses, refactoring, break up the functions, state management, use an object class to hold state, data handling, separate data from logic, fetch JSON. So these are actually known issues. Again, they were decisions I made based on the requirements, which were they're kind of rare. They're kind of rare. It's basically designed to work offline without access to a database. So now it's choosing the tone. It says refining the tone, keep the tone encouraging and professional, framing critiques as opportunities for improvement rather than failures. Self-correction, ensure I sound like an expert, not just a beginner. So I don't know what that parentheses part is about, but that was interesting. And so for part 7, it says final review. Check against the original user request, rate this. The resulting structure provides a comprehensive professional rating and path forward. This leads directly to the final response structure. And now it's done thinking. And so I'm already annoyed, right? So I'm getting defensive. And I think like the AI, it couldn't, right? To be fair to the AI, it couldn't know all of the requirements because I didn't give them any of the requirements. But then, now it likes my project. It said, this is a highly functional and impressively complex piece of JavaScript. You have successfully implemented a deep level of interactivity, particularly surrounding key events and complex state management, navigation, and search. If I were to give this code a grade based on a blend of functionality, complexity, and engineering best practices, I would give it a B+. Very good. What? The logic. Why? It works. It performs all of the necessary features: autocomplete, navigation, search, highlighting. However, the code structure relies heavily on global variables and has large monolithic functions, which makes it difficult to maintain, scale, and debug. Here's what it liked. Strengths. What you did well. Functionality and feature depth. The core goal, creating a complex, navigable, and searchable Bible reader, is achieved. The handling of various user inputs, keyboard, arrows, clicks, autocomplete, selection, search term entry, is sophisticated. Event handling, the Bible keys and Bible reading functions are remarkable, using them to manage cross-field state changes. Example, moving the chapter changes the required verse display and the verse changes the highlight, shows a strong grasp of advanced JavaScript events. A search implementation, the ability to search, paginate, and correctly wrap the search term in a B tags, is quite difficult and shows a high level of attention to detail. Data handling, initial pass. You have successfully modeled the Bible structure using 2 separate data arrays, CPDV and books, which is a good start towards separating data from presentation logic. And so then it made some suggestions. It said an action plan for improvement. If you want to take this code to the A grade, focus on this refactoring plan. Create a Bible app class, implement setter methods, refactor event handlers, externalize data. And then it says, keep up the amazing work. This project is technically impressive and demonstrates a lot of skill. Focus on architectural cleanup next. And so I think of the 4, the last one was already being considered. And so it rated the JavaScript, but what about the HTML and CSS? And so I took the HTML and CSS and I pasted it in there and it started thinking. Here's a thinking process for analyzing the provided HTML and CSS. Analyze the goal. The user has provided the remaining pieces of the project, HTML and CSS, after the JavaScript was reviewed. The goal is to rate these components based on best practices, usability, maintainability, and adherence to the overall user experience established by the JavaScript. And so it says, analyzing the CSS, visual styling components, variables, property root, excellent use of CSS custom properties, variables. This makes the design highly customizable and improves maintainability significantly. Scroll bar styling, good use of vendor prefixes to improve aesthetics, even if limited in cross-browser support. Layout structure uses Flexbox extensively. This is modern and robust for arranging components. Pseudo elements and units uses DVH, dynamic viewport height, which is very modern and helps ensure consistent full screen layout regardless of browser UI elements. Responsiveness. The app media queries are thoughtful. The addition of column layout for larger screens shows advanced thinking about reading flow. And that's amazing that it picked up on that, because that is a key feature. That's actually mind-blowing, the fact that it knows that it has columns on a wider screen. I mean, technically it's only one word, right? Only the one word of columns, but it knew to look at that. That's impressive. Aesthetics. The chosen colors, background color, RGB 251, 249, 243, provides a clean, paper-like feel, which is perfect for a religious reading app. Minor critique, the root highlight setting, height 100 dVh, is combined with body margin 8 pixels. Might cause slight layout confusion or unnecessary padding. The scroll snapping logic in the CSS is a bit complex and might need minor debugging based on the JavaScript execution. And so it's still thinking, all right? So it's analyzing the HTML structure semantics component. Boilerplate, clean and includes essential meta tags, viewport description. Semantics uses appropriate tags like header, main, and footer implicitly or explicitly in the structure. IDs, the IDs are very descriptive. Bible book, Bible text, Bible search input, which aligns perfectly with the complex JavaScript that uses them for targeting. Accessibility, the use of role button and descriptive title attributes is good. Labels are present for inputs. Structure flow, the overall layout logic, input row, text box, search box, navigation buttons, makes logical sense for a reading application. Critique, the overall structure is very nested. While functional, simplifying the container divs might clean up the DOM hierarchy slightly without losing functionality. And that last one is actually one of the open issues on GitHub. I feel like the layout could be a little stronger, especially if I want to create zoomable text that responds to the device. There is a slight issue there. So that's good that I picked up on that too. It's still thinking. Synthesize the review and rating. Rating, the CSS and HTML are professional and execute the vision established by the JavaScript. They complement the functional strength of the JS. I will rate them highly. So what I think is interesting, it maintained the context. I pasted in the JavaScript, then I pasted in the CSS and the HTML. It's still working together. It's not like it lost memory of what was said previously. So then it continues, focus areas, group the feedback into strengths, potential issues, and recommendations for maximum utility. Final polish, tone and presentation. Structure the review clearly and maintain the helpful, expert tone established in the previous response. Self-correction. Make sure to praise the use of variables and modern CSS features specifically. Again, I wonder why that's in parentheses. Why does it need parentheses when it's thinking? So that confused me. The final grade. The HTML and CSS are an extremely strong complement to the sophisticated JavaScript. They successfully translate the complex data and interactivity into a highly usable, aesthetically pleasing, and well-structured interface. If I were to assign a letter grade for this component, I would give it an A-. Excellent! Now, I don't know if it's just making me feel nice, but I think I like the project. Right? I think it does the job. But if you're going to be very specific, like professional and code and best practices, I can see the nitpicks. I understand where it's going on it. But at the end of the day, it's usable. I use it, right? I use this app, at least in the widgets app, daily, right? So that was nice to see. The logic. Why? The design is clean, professional, and shows mastery of modern CSS techniques. If anyone learned from the Photics Web Guide, it was me. Right? Writing about modern CSS, it basically changed the way I work. And it's nice to see that the AI picked up on that. CSS variables, flexbox, responsiveness. The HTML structure is semantically and perfectly tailored to the needs of the JavaScript logic. CSS review, the visual polish, strengths, use of variables, @property. This is the standout feature. Using CSS custom properties for colors, widths, and spacing, border color, spacing, makes the entire style sheet incredibly maintainable and scalable. If you want to change the look, you only change a few variables, which was one of the points in the book. That's why it's covered in the book. It's such a nice thing. So it's nice to see that echoed here. Modern layout techniques. The consistent and correct use of flexbox for all major components is textbook perfect. Interesting choice of words there. Responsiveness. The media queries are highly advanced. Implementing a multi-column view is a sophisticated choice that improves the reading experience significantly on larger screens. The visual hierarchy. The use of subtle dotted borders, light backgrounds, and specific padding gives the application a dedicated academic reading feel perfectly suited for a Bible reader. Wow. So now it's thinking visually, which again, impressive for an AI. The scroll snapping. The use of scroll snap type in both the general text and the mobile desktop view is brilliant for controlling the user flow and making the experience feel physical and deliberate. Wow, it picked up on that too. Very nice. If you've seen an earlier video on the channel, I mentioned the scroll snapping, so the AI is picking up on that. Hopefully people in the Photics TV community are picking up on that too. So, conclusion. It's kind of funny because just recently I was wondering, what's the killer app for AI? Like, why? When the internet was new, at first I didn't like it, but it wouldn't be long before I realized it was very significant and useful. And I changed my career to be, a webmaster, right? But with AI, there's such hesitation. I don't know how to use it, right? Because there's a lot of people hate it. They don't want to see, like as a content creator, they don't want to see me using AI. So when you see search engines using more AI features and operating systems using more AI features, I need a strategy, and I'm not sure what that's going to be. And ultimately, code review, is that a feature? Well, I think the ultimate conclusion here is that I don't know if it was an actual review. It didn't really tell me anything that I didn't know, aside from the technical terms, because it did present it professionally. None of this is a surprise. And again, the AI didn't have the full context. So I guess it's a question is, did I do a good job, or is the AI just making me feel nice? You let me know in the comments. And also you can let me know what you think of this new technology. Thanks for watching.